Imagine for a second, two massive tectonic forces. They're just sliding toward each other.
Okay.
And on one of these plates, you have what you could call the young world.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking specifically about Africa, which has, the youngest population on the entire planet.
Right. It's a continent that is it's hungry for work, digitally native.
Exactly. They're looking for that entry point into the global economy. And then on the other plate, you have the AI wave.
A technological tsunami? I mean, that's not an exaggeration. It's rewriting all the rules of labor. It's automating tasks at a speed we've just never seen before.
And it's making the very idea of entry-level work feel, frankly, pretty unstable.
It really is.
And that's the friction point we're diving into today. The stakes they're incredibly high. We're looking at a sector that has been sold as this golden ticket for youth employment in Africa.
Business process outsourcing, BPO.
Right. Call centers, IT support,
Right.
back office stuff. African governments are betting the house on this sector, creating millions of jobs.
But, and this is the paradox, we are staring at data, hard data, saying that AI could automate 40% of the tasks within those exact same jobs.
It's the definition of an inflection point, isn't it?
It is. It's a complete paradox. And we're trying to figure out if AI is going to be the job killer for these young people or if it's going to be a career supercharger.
And the answer isn't simple. It's not a binary thing.
No, it's not robots take over or everyone gets rich.
Yeah.
It's much, much messier than that.
So to navigate this mess, we are doing a deep dive into a really heavy stack of research.
We are.
We've got the BPO 2026 and Beyond report from HTC Global Services, which gives us that sort of industry insider view on where the tech is headed.
But our main guide today, the one we're really leaning on, is the report called Preparing for AI in the BPO and IT sector in Africa.
And that one comes from Genesis Analytics and Caribou Digital in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, a really heavy-hitting group.
Yeah, and that Genesis Analytics report is it's crucial. Because it moves way beyond the high-level economic theory. They didn't just run models in a lab somewhere.
No, they went to the ground.
They went to the ground. They interviewed workers in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. So we're going to hear about real people, we'll call them Nora, Jacob, Christopher, and how they are actually using this technology in their jobs right now.
Okay, so before we get into all the doom or gloom scenarios, we should probably clarify what we're even talking about.
Good idea.
When I say outsourcing or BPO, I think the default image in most people's heads is a huge room, full of people on headsets.
Answering angry customer service calls.
Yes, about their credit card bills.
Yeah.
Is that still the reality, or has the sector kind of moved on?
Well, it's definitely part of the reality, but it's a shrinking part of the value chain. If you look at that HTC Global Services breakdown, the sector's really evolved. It's business process management now.
So broader.
Much broader. I mean, yes, it's customer experience CX, but it's also banking and financial services, it's healthcare services, cloud migration, even cybersecurity and digital engineering.
So it's less about, did you try turning it off and on again?
Yeah.
And more about managing complex digital infrastructure for big companies.
Precisely. We're seeing things now like agent force, digital workplace management, even high-end legal process outsourcing. It's become a really sophisticated industry.
And for Africa, that sophistication is the real lure, isn't it?
It is. It's not just about being the cheapest labor anymore. It's about capability. It's about being trusted to handle the backbone of these huge global companies.
Okay, so let's dig into that golden ticket narrative. Why is this specific sector getting so much attention from African governments right now? Why pin so many hopes on BPO?
Well, the numbers, they just tell a really compelling story of untapped potential. Right now, Africa captures only about 2% of the global BPO demand.
2%. That's it.
That's it. And just to give you some context, Asia, think the Philippines and India, they hold about 36%.
Wow. That is a massive disparity. But, in business terms, a gap like that, it looks like a growth opportunity. It looks like room to run.
It is a massive runway, exactly. The Genesis Analytics report, it points out that if Africa just increases that share by 10 percentage points, so from 2% to 12%.
Still way behind Asia.
Still way behind Asia. But that small jump could generate 5 million direct jobs.
5 million. That's a significant number. That's 5 million individual incomes, families.
And that's just direct employment. When you factor in the multiplier effect, people spending their wages, supporting local businesses, housing, transport, you're looking at another 7 million indirect jobs.
So we are talking about a potential economic transformation that could stabilize entire regions.
It really could. Currently, the sector employs about 1.1 million people across the continent. And the big players are who you expect: South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria, and Uganda.
And I've seen the policy pushes. I know Nigeria has its outsourced to Nigeria initiative, and Uganda has set this very specific goal of 100,000 jobs.
They're all in.
So beyond just wanting the jobs, what is Africa's competitive advantage here? Is it just about cost?
Yeah.
Being cheaper?
Cost competitiveness is, it's the baseline. It gets you in the door. Everyone wants to save money.
Sure.
But the real moat, the defensive advantage, it goes deeper. It's demographics. You have this huge young workforce that's increasingly tech savvy. You have high English language compatibility in a lot of these nations, which is absolutely non-negotiable for serving U.S. and U.K. markets.
And the time zones, I assume.
And the time zones. They're favorable for Europe and pretty accessible for North America. It lets you run that follow the sun model.
Follow the sun, meaning when the U.S. sleeps, Africa works, and vice versa.
Exactly. You get 24/7 productivity.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like the perfect storm for growth.
It really does. But I have a feeling the report is about to throw some cold water on all this optimism. There's always a catch, isn't there?
There is. And the but is it's substantial. The current projections show that if we just stick to business as usual, so without adopting AI, without changing how we train people, we don't get anywhere near those 5 million jobs.
Okay. So what's the number then?
Without that aggressive intervention, the forecast sees only an additional 1.8 million direct jobs by 2030.
Which is still growth, to be fair.
It's growth, absolutely. But it's not the explosion governments are banking on to solve massive youth unemployment.
And we also have to be honest about the quality of some of these jobs. I mean, the report doesn't shy away from what it calls the dark side of the industry. We've all heard the stories.
No, and we shouldn't shy away from it either. I mean, on one hand, the sector offers dignified work, wages that are often way higher than the national minimum wage.
Sometimes up to 10 times higher,
Yeah.
right? It's literally creating a middle class.
It is. But there are some really tough corners of this industry. Content moderation is the prime example. It can cause genuine psychological trauma. I mean, you're filtering the absolute worst of the internet all day. And some of the AI data work, which we'll get into later, is often criticized as being this low-wage digital assembly line work. It can be very precarious.
Okay, so we have the sector that's poised for growth, but has some quality issues, and it needs a huge strategic pivot to hit its targets. And then, right in the middle of this delicate situation, we drop the atomic bomb of generative AI.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the 40% problem.
This is the number. This is the statistic from the Genesis Analytics research that just forces you to stop and really pay attention. They found that over 40% of the current tasks performed in the African BPO sector are at risk of automation by 2030.
Okay, I want to be really specific about the language you just used.
Yeah.
You said tasks, not jobs. Why is that distinction so important?
It's everything. It's the difference between your job changing and your job disappearing entirely. A job is basically a bundle of different tasks, right?
Okay, yeah.
So if I'm a customer service agent, my tasks include answering the phone, verifying your identity, searching a database, typing up notes, and then actually solving your problem.
A whole workflow.
A whole workflow. AI might automate the identity verification and the note typing. That could be 40% of the work. But the job itself might still be there, just focused on that remaining 60%, the complex problem-solving bit.
Okay, so I'm not necessarily fired, but my day-to-day work is great.
Yeah.
It's radically different. But doesn't that consolidation of tasks mean that companies eventually just need fewer people? I mean, if one person can now do the work of two because all the grunt work is gone.
In many cases, yes, it does. Or they need different kinds of people. And this is where the report finds this vulnerability gap.
A vulnerability gap.
Yeah, it highlights that junior roles, the entry-level positions that young people use to get a foothold in the economy, have 52% of their tasks susceptible to automation.
52%.
Right.
That's more than half of the job.
It is. Now compare that to senior roles, where only 4% of tasks are fully automatable and a full 40% are considered resilient to AI.
This creates what I would call a ladder problem.
A ladder problem. That's a great way to put it.
If the bottom rungs of the career ladder,
Yeah.
all these entry-level tasks, are just done by bots, how does anyone ever get the experience to climb up to the senior roles? You can't just start in the middle.
That is the multi-million-dollar question for the entire global economy, not just for Africa. How do you train a senior manager if they never did the grunt work? The whole apprenticeship model is It's breaking.
And I imagine it gets even more complicated when you look at who is actually in those junior roles.
It does. Women are disproportionately affected. The data shows women face a 10% higher automation risk than men in this sector.
And is that because of the specific roles they tend to be hired into?
Exactly. It's a structural thing. Women in African BPO are concentrated in those customer experience roles,
Hmm.
contact centers, support, which are, ground zero for automation.
And the men.
The men are more likely to be found in ITES or technical support, which is a bit more insulated from immediate replacement.
Okay, let's drill down into that. The report breaks the whole sector down into 4 job families. I think it's worth walking through these because the impact of AI is just so different depending on where you're sitting.
It is.
Let's start with the giant, customer experience.
CX, it's the engine room. It makes up 44% of the entire sector in Africa. And like we said, it's mostly junior roles.
And this is where the chatbots are making the biggest dent, I assume.
To an extent, yes. Text-based chat is highly automatable. If your job is just copying and pasting answers to FAQs, that role is, well, it's effectively dead.
But voice calls are different.
Voice is harder. Much harder. Accents, empathy, navigating a customer's frustration, understanding sarcasm. AI is getting better for sure, but it really struggles with the human element of a real conversation.
The report introduces us to a worker named Nora in Uganda. I found her story so fascinating because it just disrupts that narrative that workers are just these passive victims of the technology.
Nora is a perfect example of what we call augmentation. She's working with the AI. She's a customer service agent.
Right.
Her company introduced an AI assistant into her workflow. So now when a customer query comes in, the AI analyzes it and suggests 4 possible responses on her screen.
So it gives her options.
It gives her options. Nora reads them. She uses her judgment to pick the best one. Maybe she tweaks it a little, and then she sends it.
So she's moved from being a writer to being an editor.
Exactly. And the jump in productivity it's undeniable. She used to solve maybe 20 tickets a shift.
Okay.
Now she solves 30. And the average response time dropped from 10 minutes down to 2 minutes.
That is a huge efficiency gain. But the logical question is, if everyone is suddenly 50% more efficient, doesn't the company need 50% fewer Noras? Did she say if she's worried that she's basically training her own replacement?
She admits the concern is there, yeah. But her outlook is actually surprisingly optimistic. She believes that Tier 1 support, the basic repetitive stuff, should be automated.
She wants it to be automated.
Yeah. She wants to move up to Tier 2, where you deal with the complex emotional problems that really need a human connection. She sees AI as the tool that clears away the junk work so she can focus on the career-building work.
That's the hopeful view, moving up the value chain. Okay, now let's look at the second family, which the report paints in a much darker light, finance and accounting.
This is the danger zone.
Why is finance more dangerous than customer service? Isn't finance more skilled work?
It is skilled, but at the junior level, it's very rules-based. It accounts for about 13% of the sector, but it has the highest risk of automation, 44% of tasks.
And what are those tasks?
We're talking about bookkeeping, data entry, invoice processing, transaction reconciliation. I mean, algorithms don't make math mistakes.
Right.
They don't get tired. They don't need coffee breaks. They are just fundamentally better at rules-based processing than humans are.
So if you're a junior accountant in a BPO in Nairobi and your whole job is just processing invoices, you're in trouble.
You are on a burning platform. You need to pivot, and you need to do it immediately. The advice from the report is crystal clear. Start being a data entry person and start being a strategic analysis person.
So become the person who explains what the numbers mean.
Yes, you need to be the one explaining what the numbers mean to the client, not just typing them into a spreadsheet. The value is shifting from the processing to the insight.
Okay, noted. Pivot or perish. Let's move to the third family, IT-enabled services, or ITES. These are the techies, the developers, the IT support folks.
Right. This is about 25% of the sector, and there's a little bit of irony here.
Which is?
These are the people building the technology that might eventually automate their own jobs.
Like digging your own grave, digitally speaking.
Well, not entirely. Senior roles here are actually very resilient. Things like architecture, system design, complex integration, that's all safe for now.
But for the junior folks?
It's a mixed bag. The report mentions workers like Sandra, a web developer in Kenya. She uses a tool called ZZZ Code AI for debugging her code. And there's Michael in Ethiopia who uses ChatGPT to write repetitive code
I
blocks.
think most developers do that now, don't they? It's a massive time saver. I even use it for simple scripts.
It is. They see AI purely as a productivity tool. It handles the boring syntax stuff so they can focus on the real problem solving. But, and this is the key, it raises the bar for entry.
How so?
Well, if an AI can write junior level code, why would a company hire a junior developer? The risk is that they'll just hire one senior developer who, armed with AI, can do the work of three juniors.
So the entry-level role in coding might just evaporate.
It could. And you get into that classic scenario where you can't get a job without experience and you can't get experience without a job.
That brings us to the fourth and final family. This one is small, but growing incredibly fast. AI data services.
Right. This is currently only about 3% of the sector, but it has a projected compound annual growth rate, a CIG of 37%. That's explosive.
And this is basically the pick and shovel work of the AI gold rush, right?
Precisely. It's data annotation. Labeling images, tagging text, identifying objects in video to train the AI models. The report tells the story of Jacob in Ghana. He's a data annotator.
And what's his take on all this? Because this job feels like the most vulnerable one of all. You're literally teaching the machine how to do your job.
He sees the threat very clearly. He notes that platforms like V7 can now auto-annotate objects. So all of a sudden, one person can do the work that used to take 3 to 5 people.
So the tools are learning faster than the people are working.
Yes, but, and this is a really critical nuance, as AI grows, the demand for clean data, for verified data, grows even faster. They need what's called humans in the loop, HITL.
Humans in the loop. To do what?
To verify the AI's work, to handle the edge cases, to deal with ambiguity. So while the efficiency per task goes way up, the total volume of work is just exploding.
But we have to ask the question, is this good work? Or are we just creating a kind of digital sweatshop?
That is the catch. It is often very low-wage work. It's the digital assembly line. On the plus side, it gets young people into the formal economy, which is a huge deal. It gives them a bank account, a tax ID, a history of employment.
But it's not a career.
It's not necessarily a long-term career unless you upskill into managing those data flows. You don't want to be the person drawing boxes around cars and pictures for 10 years straight.
Okay, so we've got a landscape where efficiency is skyrocketing, but that entry-level door is either closing or just changing shape completely. So now I want to look forward. The Genesis Analytics report, it doesn't just look at today. It actually plays out 4 possible scenarios for the future. They call it crystal ball gazing.
Yeah, and these scenarios are really helpful for policymakers because it helps them understand the full range of possibilities. It helps us avoid just thinking in a straight line.
Let's run through them. Scenario 1, stagnated progress.
This is the AI hits a wall scenario. Maybe we hit hardware limits or energy constraints because these models use an insane amount of power. Or maybe strict regulation just chokes off development.
Or people just lose trust in them because they keep making things up.
Exactly, the hallucination problem.
So business as usual, basically.
Like pretty much. Automation slows right down. And it's actually good for stability in the short term because jobs aren't disrupted as quickly, but it's really bad for long-term competitiveness. If Africa banks on this scenario and ignores AI and the rest of the world moves on, they get left behind.
Okay. Scenario 2, uneven breakthroughs.
This is a bifurcated world, a world of haves and have-nots. The private sector tech and finance, they adopt AI aggressively because they have the money, the data. But the public sector, healthcare, they lag way behind due to bureaucracy and budget constraints.
You have these super efficient banks and completely archaic government services.
Exactly. And for African BPOs, this creates clear winners and losers. The firms that pivot to serving those high-tech banks and tech giants, they win big. But the ones still doing basic call center work for, say, a local utility company, they will slowly bleed out as those sectors stagnate.
Okay. Scenario 3, rapid advancement.
This is the scary one. This is where you imagine a breakthrough in quantum computing or some major algorithmic leap. AI gets very smart very fast.
What happens to the jobs in that world?
Tectonic shifts. We're talking about massive displacement of junior roles across the board. If this happens, Africa risks losing its market share incredibly fast if it can't skill up its workforce to keep pace.
Because the cheap labor advantage just evaporates.
It's gone. AI is cheaper than the cheapest human. If the AI costs a fraction of a cent per task, it doesn't matter if the human is in Lagos or London. The human is just too expensive.
And finally, scenario 4, AGI, artificial general intelligence.
The sci-fi scenario. This is when AI matches or exceeds human intelligence across all tasks, not just narrow ones like chess or accounting.
So, game over.
Well, the report calls it an existential crisis. Traditional jobs just dissolve. The whole concept of work is redefined. And this is where you have to start talking seriously about things like universal basic income, because the labor market as we know it simply breaks.
The idea of outsourcing becomes completely irrelevant at that point.
Totally. You don't need to outsource to humans anymore. The machine just does it all.
It's interesting you mentioned that because one of the concepts the report touches on is the AI moat migration. This idea that the traditional protections or moats that businesses used to have are just evaporating.
Right. In the past, having a massive workforce of English speakers in a specific time zone, that was a moat. It was a huge defensive advantage.
And now,
In an AGI world, or even in that rapid advancement world, that moat just dries up. The new moat isn't who has the people, it's who has the people who can command the machines. The value shifts from the labor itself to the orchestration of that labor.
which brings us to the people themselves. I mean, we can speculate all day, but what are the actual 20-somethings on the ground in Nairobi and Lagos doing right now? Are they hiding from this or are they embracing it?
This was my favorite part of the research, actually. You might assume the global north, the US, Europe is leading on AI adoption because they have all the access. But the data just flips that script completely. In South Africa, 60% of workers routinely use generative AI.
60%. Wait, that's significantly higher than adoption rates we see in the US or the UK. I've seen Western numbers that are closer to 30 or 40%.
It is much higher, and it shows these young people are hungry. They know they have to compete on a global stage. And the adoption is happening in two main ways. First, there's what the report calls guerrilla adoption.
Guerrilla adoption, like they're doing it under the table,
Yes.
secretly using AI.
Exactly. We met Joan in Nigeria. She uses ChatGPT to draft her emails to clients because she wants to sound more professional or more like a native English speaker.
And her company doesn't know she's doing this.
They didn't tell her to do it. In fact, they might not even know. She just does it because it helps her be better at her job. It's a survival tactic.
It's a smart survival tactic. She's augmenting herself.
And a very smart one. And then you have the complete other side of the coin, mandated adoption. There's Christopher in Nigeria. His company forces them to use Microsoft Copilot.
It's not a suggestion.
No, if he doesn't use it, it actually shows up on a back-end report, and he gets in trouble with his manager.
Why weren't you using the robot, Christopher? That is a wild shift in management style. It's not just about your output anymore. It's about how you achieved the output.
It is. But the sentiment among the workers themselves is really mixed. You have this high adoption, but you also have this undercurrent of fear. Gabriel, a content moderator in Kenya, put it very bluntly.
What did he say?
He said, the more AI gets into what we do, the more the possibility of us being redundant increases.
He sees the writing on the wall. He feels like every day he goes to work, he's training his replacement.
Pretty much. But then you have someone like Conrad, who's a team lead in Kenya. And he's much more confident. He believes AI will still need a human touch until we get to that full AGI level.
So he thinks his job is safe.
He does. He thinks his job is safe because someone needs to manage the AI, check for those hallucinations, handle the customer escalations. He sees himself as the pilot, not the passenger.
Okay, so we've laid out the landscape, the risks, and we've heard the voices from the ground. Now let's try to be helpful. If I'm a young person in Accra or Cape Town right now, or if I'm a policymaker in Kigali, what is the survival guide? The report outlines some pretty concrete recommendations.
Right. The first and most critical recommendation is this shift in mindset to focusing on augmentation. We need to stop framing this as man versus machine.
So what does that look like in practice? I mean, how do you shift an entire workforce's thinking towards augmentation?
It means you stop trying to compete with the AI on the tasks it's already good at, like data processing or basic writing. You concede that ground, and you focus on the 10% of tasks that are resilient.
And what are those?
Empathy, complex problem solving, ethical reasoning, cultural nuance, and this is the crucial one, whispering to the AI.
You mean prompt engineering?
Exactly. The report suggests this foundational trio of skills for the new workforce. Number one is AI literacy, just knowing when to use it, what its limits are, what the ethical boundaries are.
Right.
Number two is data fundamentals. You have to understand the fuel that powers this engine, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't understand basic data structure, you can't properly manage an AI model.
And number three is prompt engineering, the whispering.
Yes, learning how to talk to the machine to get the best possible output. The new literacy isn't just reading and writing, it's prompting. If you can command an AI to do the work of 10 people, you become as valuable as 10 people. It's about being an orchestrator.
But what about the people who get left out of this? We talked about how this boom is mostly an urban thing. What about rural youth? If the BPO sector goes all high-tech, doesn't that just leave the villages even further behind?
This is a huge equity issue, you're right. If everything goes digital, the digital divide can just get wider and wider. The report strongly suggests investing in rural BPO models. Sometimes they call it impact sourcing.
Are there examples of this actually working? Or is it just a nice idea, like a charity project?
No, it's working. There's an organization called Kwala that sets up these centers of excellence in Kenya. And then there's Learning Lions, which is this amazing solar-powered IT hub in remote Turkana.
Wait, a solar-powered IT hub in the desert?
Yes. They are training young people in really remote areas to do high-level digital work. They have high-speed satellite internet and huge solar arrays. And then you have companies like Cloud Factory or Shortlist that are doing location-agnostic work.
So the idea is you bring the work to the people instead of forcing everyone to migrate into the capital city slums.
Exactly. It distributes the wealth, but it requires infrastructure, internet, and reliable power, which is a whole other challenge, of course.
And finally, the report talks about needing a just framework. What do they mean by that?
They mean we cannot ignore the human cost in this transition. We need real advocacy for mental health support, especially for those content moderators we mentioned.
Abs-
And we need fair wages. The efficiency gains from AI shouldn't just go to the company's bottom line. AI shouldn't just mean cheaper humans. It should mean more productive humans who get paid better.
That's the dream, isn't it? It's Nora moving from Tier 1 to Tier 2 and getting a raise because she's handling the really complex, valuable issues, not just resetting passwords.
That is the optimal outcome. It's the difference between a race to the bottom on cost and a race to the top on skill.
So let's try to wrap this all up. We started with this huge contradiction. A sector that's supposed to create millions of jobs, facing a technology that's designed to automate them. What's the final verdict?
The verdict is that the BPO sector in Africa is at a critical tipping point.
Hmm.
It absolutely could be the engine that employs millions of young people, or it could be completely hollowed out.
And the deciding factor is what?
The deciding factor is realizing that the moat for African talent isn't just about being cheaper anymore. That race to the bottom is over. AI won that race.
So the new race is a race for quality.
The new moat is being better at working with the machines. It's about Nora using AI to become superhuman, not about Nora being replaced by a bot.
And here's a thought to leave you with. We mentioned that South African workers are adopting Gen AI at that 60% rate, much higher than in the West.
Right.
So if the global South is adopting this technology faster, largely because they have less legacy baggage, fewer old systems to protect than the global North, could we actually see a leapfrog event? Could the next generation of truly AI-native companies come from Nairobi or Lagos simply because they built their entire workforce around AI from day one?
It's entirely possible. I mean, when you don't have to protect the old way of doing things, you're completely free to invent the new way.
Or will that digital assembly line just become a fully automated server room, leaving those millions of young people disconnected? That's really the choice that's on the table right now.
And that choice depends on skilling up. Starting now.
Keep learning, keep adapting. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.